could feel that electrical impulse in my neck, and I could see things change color, and I felt a seizure coming on, so I signed to my
she does an X. She has an X on top of her seizure medication. That means I need my medicine.
And so I took my medicine and I chewed up, and I was able to stay conscious, but I shook for I don't know how long.
Do you need water right now?
No. I've got a bottle right there, but I do. I'm constantly dehydrated from Keppra for seizures, from my schizophrenia medication. Seroquel,
yes.
And then I'm on Valium 24 hours a day.
Valium.
Oh, not Valium. I do have Valium for emergency. Xanax. I'm sorry, my memories. When I wake up in the morning, I will have a seizure. If I don't have my medicine and my bottle of water right there, I'll go right into a seizure. And they can be very violent. I've hurt myself.
Breaks bones.
I've broken bones, and I've just recovered from 3 broken ribs with a seizure. And I've actually had my ulcers come out here and there, and I don't know.
She has personalities that come out, and she'll start talking to them. And,
I can hear them all the time, and I've seen them when I was in my crib. I remember trying to look into my mom's room, mom and dad's, and I remember seeing this man, and he's still with me. He's the meanest of all of them. I have 7, and there started with that one, and he would corner me in the hall, and he says horrible things, and he always wants me to he wants me to die, very literally. And he encouraged me when I was a teenager to try to take my life, and I tried. And I ended up in a ward, which I really regret that happened, but I was desperate because I can't escape this. But I'm glad it didn't work, because I need to be here for Stephen. Because I've spent years not sleeping. And in school, when it would get quiet, they would get loud. And the older I got, the more of them there were. So, and I'd have drops. When was my first drop?
honey, I saw your first grand mal seizure when he was about 6 years ago. And you'd been telling me that you would fall and I'd see bruises, and you said, I don't know why, I just wake up. And there was a home health nurse helping Stephen at our home. He'd just gotten out of the hospital with encephalopathy, and they didn't expect him to. And I contacted Dr. Russell Blaylock, and I said, what can I do for my son? And they said, this doesn't look good, he may not survive. Dr. Blaylock answered right back, and he said, Mary, I've given you a link on Amazon to order. It's a flavonoid called Bakelin, and I talk about that in my book. And he cautioned me, he said, it can chelate iron out of your body, so you have to be careful giving it. Take down the inflammation in his brain and stop the seizures and help heal his brain. So I showed that email to Stephen's office, and I said, have you ever heard of medical doctors take this? And I think actions, no, I didn't get it, because what we're doing is not working. So I ordered it. It was $19.99 on Amazon. They send him home to the hospital because, you know, they won't keep him. He's lying there unconscious. He came home unconscious. Should I wait a moment?
Just wait a second. Sorry.
So they sent him home unconscious, and home health was coming in twice to cath him because he was on the sofa, just totally, well, it looked like he wasn't in this world. And the home health nurse was leaving, and Laurel was there. It was his birthday, actually. And I was thanking the nurse for coming, and I turned back, and Laurel's on her side, just staring, and she had her hands kind of drawn in, and she started the tonic-clonic grand mal seizure. And when she finished, she couldn't talk afterwards for a while. And I said, honey, is that what you're calling these just drops or falls? She didn't understand what was going on. She said, yes. And then she started seeing a neurologist, and they put her on medication. So
I had a seizure, I think, last night, or I don't know. I've had about 5 grand mal this week, from what Thomas told me and other people.
And Stephen,
and I tend to, what I'm told, I tend to, I'll flail so hard that if I'm on the ground and they're not holding my head, I'll bash my head into the wall because I'm doing this.
Right. People have to hold her head.
I have also drops where I'll just be mid-sentence and I'm down and then I'm just out for.
And that's exactly what Stephen does. He has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and it's one of the worst forms of epilepsy. Many people aren't aware of it. 2 to 5% of the people with epilepsy fall into that category. So he presents with grand mal seizures, absent seizures, myoclonic seizures, where his muscles will just tighten out and he'll just suddenly be stiffened out. He has drop seizures, which are atonic, which means no tone seizures, and he will just drop. He had a drop seizure 2 years ago, and my husband was trying to transfer him into the bathroom from his wheelchair onto the toilet in the bathroom, and he had a drop, and I heard it from the living room, and it sounded like a gun going off, and I said, "What did he break?" He said, "Call an ambulance, he's broken his leg." He had emergency surgery, and he now has a rod and screws in the leg. They had to put it back together. But the issue is, and when I spoke with Dale Bigtree, when I talked with him in Houston at the conference, I said, here's the problem. I wrote this book because they don't mind damaging our children. And then when you go to the hospital, you don't get a lot of help from doctors. And in 2010, this man right here, who is 36 chronologically, 6 years old mentally, he wants to meet Mickey Mouse and shake his hand. And we took him 3 times by ambulance to a hospital here in Oklahoma City, and they'd turn him away. Each time we'd go, they said, "We can't treat his seizures because he's autistic." I said,
We
"Well,
can't treat
we
his
cannot
seizures because he's autistic.
Yes. I
That's
said,
not
"Well, that is
okay."
against the Americans with Disability Act." They said, "We're sorry, we're just not equipped." So on the second trip, an officer who had come to our home to help us said, "I'm going with you to that hospital and talk to that doctor." So she walked up and I stood with her with the doctor. She said he becomes aggressive when he's having seizures because he's scared. I don't know why, but it happens. And she said he is now a danger to himself and others. He's having seizures. You cannot release him back to the parents' custody at this point. And the doctor said, okay. The officer left, and in 2 hours the doctor came in and said, "I'm releasing him." And I said, "But doctor, look at him. You have him strapped 4-point to a bed with IVs, 7 or 8 people in the room. I can't do this. My husband and I, we can't do this alone." And he said, well, I said, "So where do I take him to get treatment for the seizures?" Because Stephen had kicked a
Can I
security
just
guard.
say, just open the door, Bella, or somebody says some air is coming in from him because I don't want him to get over hot, yeah?
Stephen kicked a security guard while he was having.
Wait 1 second.
I did not.
There, that's better for the
It's
air.
okay, baby. You're not in trouble.
You're not in
No,
trouble.
you're not in trouble. I
It's
love you.
okay.
How would you
It's
feel?
okay.
He has PTSD like me, and he has night terrors, and we don't say certain words around him
What did I
because
say?
It's okay.
I-L or
It's okay, though.
P-O-L-I-C-E.
Did I say that?
No,
His-
it's okay.
His story needs to be told.
He thinks that he's in trouble.
Right.
Oh no,
Because
we love you.
He was
You're not in
very
trouble.
severely hurt and all that.
But this was Stephen prior to being incarcerated because he kicked a security guard on
Stephen,
that
it's
third
okay.
trip, and they charged him with
It's
a
okay.
felony
Look at me.
assault and
Oh.
arrested him, took him to the county jail and charged him with a felony assault.
What did they do to him? What did they
And
do
this
to
was
him?
after jail. This is before. And while he was incarcerated, I couldn't get in to see him. I had to hire an attorney. They held him 9 days. And when I got in to see him, the attorney was with me. And Stephen had his front teeth missing. He's been tased.
Wait, is this him in 4-point restraints?
That's him in 4-point
Oh,
restraints.
why have they done that to him?
Well, when he goes in, he becomes aggressive, and so they won't deal with him. They want to send him home. This is where he's been tased 3 times consecutively in my home. And the officer, before they tased him, they said, Mom, you may want to leave the room. I said, I'm not leaving my son. And when they tased him, his nervous system was so out of tact. He looked down and he said, ow. He didn't fall on the ground like people would normally do. So they tased him a second time and a third time. And then they said, now we have to take him and have an EKG on his heart to see if we've damaged his heart. And then when he got out of jail, after I got the attorney, he was missing his front teeth. I said, where are his teeth? They said, we don't know. I said, what happened? We don't know. He's been sent to psych wards. He comes out with this injury, and I said, what has happened? And they said, well, maybe he fell. Well, I have a friend that's a doctor. He said, Mary, that's not a fall, that's a punch, because this would have hit first. He said, that's someone that maybe had a ring on or something and injured him. He's had numerous. This is another bout with police.
Oh my God.
And all he needed was medication adjustments. And I put some of these pictures in my book, and I know they're graphic, but the world needs to know how he's being treated
Yeah,
through
they
no
do.
fault of his own. I mean, he didn't. And
He's
there's his mug shot
scared
today.
right now.
Don't be scared.
And
okay,
I'm trying to keep him
Everybody
from-
loves you.
This was his mug shot the day of the when he was in jail, and they said his eyes were brown
no,
because
that's
he was
it.
so frightened. His eyes
You
were
okay?
dilated. He has blue eyes.
You're a good boy.
And he was drooling and mumbling. And when the officer came in to arrest him, he didn't know anything about Stephen's condition. And Stephen was sitting there, and he was drooling and leaning over and having seizures one after another. And he said, "Mr. Puckett, let me explain what's about to happen to you." He said, "I'm going to read you your Miranda rights, and afterwards I'll ask you to stand up. And then I'm going to handcuff you and take you to the county jail where you will be charged with a felony assault." He said, "Do you understand what I just said?" And Stephen said, "But officer, I'm a good boy." Well, at that point, I'm crying so hard I'm kneeling on the floor. And when they took him out of that place, the hospital, to take him to jail, he was staggering and drilling and seizing. And as I said, they held him 9 days, and I had to hire an attorney to get him to see him. Well, they had moved him to a crisis center to evaluate him. And I recovered the records after the whole ordeal was over, and I got him back home. The crisis center notes said the patient arrived crawling on his hands and knees, was bladder and bowel incontinent, was mumbling and drooling. That was seizure activity. They didn't have the decency to get a wheelchair and roll him in. He crawled in like an injured dog that had been hit in the street. And that, I cried for hours when I read that from the records, and I have those records at home. So it's just shameful. And this was his wrists, and bloody wrists that he had from the handcuffs. Those were scars 1 month after jail.
Is this here in Oklahoma?
Yes.
This is
Yes.
disgrace.
It is,
disgusting.
and I tried legally, Polly, every way, even through the federal government, through the Office of Civil Rights, and they determined after a year and a half, they said a judge said he received adequate treatment that day at the hospital. And this was an occasion where in 2012, Stephen started vomiting, and he would vomit every meal, just vomit and vomit, and he couldn't keep any food down. And so I'm taking him to the ER, and they said, well, he's dehydrated, and that's why he's vomiting. And I said, but he can't eat anything or drink anything. And they'd send him home after an IV, and they'd send him home with medication for nausea. So after numerous trips to the ER, 7 months of this going on, repeatedly of throwing up, he had a grand mal seizure, because seizures are brought on by stress. And I was in bed, and I just heard a thud outside the bedroom door, and my husband screamed, "Get in here." And this is what we found. He had a grand mal seizure. He fell forward. He knocked a tooth completely out, misaligned all of his bottom teeth. And finally, then the doctor said, well, maybe we should find out why he keeps vomiting. After 7 months, he'd lost 77 pounds in this process. So they go in with a scope, and they look, and they said, well, no wonder. He has 5 huge ulcers. Some are bleeding. And he couldn't say, Mom, it really hurts when I'm eating. So, this is the...
Who scoped him?
Dr. Murray here in Oklahoma City. He's an internist.
Why is he? What's happened here?
And this
What's
was
on?
another battle with police. I don't have some of these chronologically, but there's just been numerous times
This is
they'll
all
come.
police. Wait, where is it? So how's he?
Well, what he's needing is medication adjustment for seizures, and once they do that, he's fine.
So is this when you get to hospital, or what is it that's making him come in contact with police?
He starts getting aggressive.
Yeah, but
because
why
he's
is he
seizing.
anywhere near police?
Well, we have to call him because he breaks windows.
Okay, you call the police.
He breaks
got it.
windows. He knocks holes in sheetrock.
He breaks bones.
He would go after Laurel.
I'm all scarred up.
I have broken bones. We've had numerous injuries.
Some of my tattoos I've replaced. It wasn't
So he
his
lives at
fault.
home, yeah?
Yes, we still have
Because
him.
it's not his fault. We understand.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so but I didn't want to sleep in anymore. So
So
I grew up eating all of my meals in my room by myself
With the door locked.
because if I didn't, sorry, he would physically attack me very violently every single day and night.
you're a good boy. It's a family. This whole
he's
injury.
he's not as violent now. He can get that way, and he's extremely strong. It takes full-grown firemen
3 or 4 large
at
men
least to just
strap
kind
him.
of, try to keep him from hurting himself or others. And it's part of my PTSD as well, because I spent years not sleeping, and I still go for weeks and weeks not sleeping, because at night I hear screaming along with the other people talking, because my psychiatrist said it's a replay of me hearing him not sleep and stay up all night screaming every single night. And I was used to police and firemen in the house from the first thing I remember. And so it was that, and then I started seeing the first man, and I don't know his name, and I don't want to know his name, but he's old, so, but
Stephen had his DPT shot at 2 months of age, and my mother was with me that day. She passed away when he was 4 months and 19 days old. She noticed that day his reaction. He started the high-pitched scream, which you've heard many, many times, thousands of times from other families. And she said, Mary, I've never seen a baby react that way to a vaccine. We knew nothing about toxins, and we were doing, like you said, we hand up perfectly formed we hand over our perfectly formed children, you know, beautiful babies, and we get back a damaged child, and then you live the rest of your life with this. So it's just, to me, it's shameful that they're doing this.
It really is. And where can we get this book? I have autism.
The book is on Amazon. It's available as an ebook and also paperback, and also Barnes and Noble. And on the back, on the sites, they give the ISBN number where you can call any bookstore and they could order it.
Now, how can we help you two? What can we do? What do you need?
Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who I met in Austin, Texas, said there is a connection between schizophrenia and disorders of the intestines.
Mastocytosis.
I have mastocytosis, and systemic, and it affects me physically and mentally. I have a very restricted diet, and I'm in pain a lot when I eat, so I don't eat much. He said that he wants to get, I think he said that they're trying to get some more research going to try to find that connection, or find something, because my medicine that I take, it's either my medicine or chemo. So they have to make it in a lab, and it's not regulated by the compound. It's compounded, and it's very, very expensive, and I'm not able to work or even drive a car, and so it's hard to get all of my medicine plus that with no research happening. And you know, I'm gonna be taking care of him, you know, so I have to be able to get, I don't know if I can get better, but
I'm just trying to get the message out with my book that we need people to come forward to help with this problem, like you're doing with your Autism Trust, Polly. Wonderful work you're doing. We need that everywhere for these children, worldwide.
We can't have the police and this kind of stuff
we
going
can't
on.
have that.
It's not acceptable.
No, it is not.
I have police.
I actually,
What did you say?
What did you say, Stephen?
I shake my hand.
Yeah, they shake his hand after he calms down.
Aww.
They will shake his hand, and sometimes they give him a little stick on
I
the
don't.
tattoo.
I actually have a
You're a
friend.
good boy, you know that?
Yeah, I calm down.
You're a good
He's
boy.
a very good boy.
Hug.
I want a hug. You're right. I want a big hug.
I love you. These were my beautiful children when they were younger. They're still beautiful in every way, and God sees them as perfect. That's when they were, I think, 3 and 5. Stephen was nonverbal till he was 6. And I use a lot of supplementation, and Dr. Blaylock, Dr. Stephanie Seneff has helped me with the Epsom salts bath that she recommended for Stephen, and that's in her research papers. And they've been a godsend to our family. So, and I thank everyone so much for what you've done and continue to do. So,
Do you live here in Oklahoma?
We live in Oklahoma City.
All right. Well, there's so much help needed in Oklahoma. It really is a tragic. They're tragic stories. We've got to build an autism centre trust. You know,
Yes, we do. And that's,
Peeps Place has got to be built here.
I'm retired now. You know, I was a former special ed teacher, but if I could get the resources, I would do exactly what you're doing, and that's what I'm hoping I might do with this.
Well,
book,
we know
is to
it's
help others.
not quite sure where the money's going to come for all of this, but it is going to come, and we are going to build places where no one's going to hurt you guys ever again, because that's not okay. It's just not okay.
I had a car wreck and I've had numerous surgeries, and they gave me C. diff in the hospital in 2015 from the surgeries. And I said, I have probiotics at home I can take. And they said, you can't bring that to the hospital. Well, then when I'm in isolation and they said, you're probably going to die, you won't survive. I prayed that night and I said, God, if you want me to finish this book to help others and share my 30 years plus information I've acquired, I said, please let me survive. 2 hours later, the doctor came in and he said, your last blood draw shows a slight improvement. He said, you're not out of the woods by any means, but he said, I'm encouraged and I'm here today. So that's a testimony that God is on our side.
He is. Is there anything you guys would like to say? Is there anything?
Thank you for coming to
Thank you,
Oklahoma.
thank you.
No, I don't mean to us, I mean to the peeps. Any advice to them, or?
Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't ever think that because you're different, it's wrong. It's just different.
And stay away from vaccines.
Stay
Like I
away
said.
from vaccines.
Absolutely. If I'd known, I said in the book, if I'd known, I would never have vaccinated Molly. Never.
Never.
Of course, if you'd known. No one did
No,
this on
that's right.
purpose.
Exactly.
Right.
We at least need to be given the. We don't need to be forced into it, because even though, there's not every single person, like my brother and I, he and I have to live out the rest of our lives like this, and it's not ideal to have to wake up every day like he and I do and deal with constant medication, constant hospital visits, which are so expensive. And people look at me sometimes when I see in public and they go, oh, well, she's just on drugs. I'm like,
Laurel has never done
I
drugs.
never
And I told her as a young girl, I said, if you want to look older than your age or be homeless or dead, that's what drugs will do for you.
and I have to be here for him, so I don't know.
So
It's
we're
been
trying
really,
everything
really
we
hard
can.
my whole life, and he's had it the hardest. And my parents have done an amazing job
Yes,
for him and I both.
sister.
And my mom has worked so hard on the book. And I really, really hope it helps people.
It will help. People are going to buy this book and they're going to help your family. That is going to happen. It is going to happen. These people are
God's
good
book. It's
people.
not Mary Packett's book.
I
It's
know,
God's
but
book.
they're going to go and do it, and I know them. They're good people. And what would you like to say?
You want to say
Stephen,
something?
what would you like to say to Polly and to Bella and to Toby? Toby, say thank you.
Toby.
Thank you.
Thank
Aww.
you so much.
Thank you, Tobes.
You have a wonderful
It's
day.
wonderful to meet you, and thank you for coming on the bus.
Yes,
Do you want a high five? He gives
Alright.
good high fives.
yes, he's a great boy. He loves for his sister to take her bright lipstick and kiss him there so he can look in the mirror and look
You
at
wanna
himself
kiss?
with her lips on his forehead. Oh, yeah, it's on your hand.
He likes the red lipstick.
Yes.
He
loves
likes,
to look
he
at
likes
it.
to show people that I've given him a kiss.
Aww.
He calls it a snudge.
He calls it a smudge. That's his version of kiss.
He's a sweetheart.
Yes.
All right. Well, we got to get him